My name is Claire Bennett, and I am 34 years old. 3 days after giving birth, I carried my newborn son through the front door of the house my husband and I had built together, and found my in-laws waiting for me with 2 packed suitcases beside the staircase. My father-in-law stood first. He looked at the baby in my arms, then at me, and said, "We will not raise another man's child under our family name." My mother-in-law unlocked the front door and pushed it wide open against the freezing January wind. "Leave," she said. "You and that baby have no place here." 5 relatives sat behind her like witnesses who had already heard the verdict. Nobody asked how I was feeling. Nobody asked whether my son was warm. Nobody even looked at his face. I did not cry. I did not plead. Instead, I reached into the diaper bag hanging from my shoulder and pulled out a plain brown envelope. Then I placed it in my husband's hands. He opened it. He read the first page. And for the first time in 8 years, I watched my husband look at his mother as though he had finally seen her clearly. He walked past her. He closed the front door. Then he locked it. His mother stared at him in disbelief. My husband's voice was quiet when he finally spoke. "Mom, why did you lie about Claire's brother?" She stopped breathing. Because none of us knew yet that the envelope contained proof of a secret his family had protected for 37 years. And once that secret came into the light, the people who had gathered to destroy my marriage would discover that they had been sitting inside their own trap. If you think silence means weakness, stay with me. Because sometimes the quietest person in the room is the only one who has been keeping the evidence. 7 years earlier, before the baby, before the accusations, before the packed suitcases, I had sat at my future mother-in-law's dining table for the first time. Her name was Eleanor Whitmore. She was 61 then, elegant in the precise way some people are elegant when they believe every room belongs to them. The house stood on a hill outside a small Pennsylvania town, surrounded by bare trees and perfectly trimmed hedges. Everything had its place. The silverware. The photographs. The flowers. Even the people. My husband, Nathan, had warned me during the drive that his mother could be intimidating. "She just takes time to warm up," he said. I believed him. That was one of the first mistakes I made. Nathan and I had been together for 9 months. He was 31, worked as an electrical contractor, and had the kind of quiet kindness that made strangers trust him quickly. He was gentle, patient, reliable. But he had one weakness: his mother. That evening, Eleanor asked me where I worked. I handled customer accounts for a credit union. She smiled politely. "And your parents?" I hesitated. My father left when I was 14. My mother raised me and my older brother. Her expression changed almost imperceptibly. "Older brother?" "Yes, Daniel." She placed her fork beside her plate. "Half-brother?" "No, same mother." "And where does he live?" "About 4 hours away. He works with heavy machinery." "What does he do exactly?" I laughed softly. "Whatever needs fixing." Nathan touched my hand beneath the table. Eleanor looked at him, then back at me. "How interesting!" I didn't understand what was interesting about it. So I kept eating. That was when Eleanor said something I would remember for the rest of my life. Families with complicated histories usually create complicated marriages. She said it casually, almost kindly. But there was something underneath the words. A warning. I smiled anyway. My family isn't complicated. She tilted her head. Everyone says that before they explain it. Nathan cleared his throat. "Mom." She smiled. I am only getting to know her. He squeezed my hand. It was his usual way of telling me he was on my side without actually confronting her. I would eventually learn that Nathan had mastered that gesture long before he met me. When his mother pushed, he squeezed someone's hand. When she insulted someone, he apologized later. When she crossed a boundary, he promised he would handle it. And somehow, nothing ever changed. On the drive home that night, Nathan apologized. She didn't mean anything by it. I looked out the passenger window. She called my family complicated. She asks everyone questions. She didn't ask you anything like that. He was quiet. Then he said, "I'll talk to her." I believed him. I always believed him. 2 years later, he proposed. He took me to a quiet overlook where we'd gone hiking during our first summer together. The ring wasn't enormous. It wasn't flashy. It was simple. He had saved for months to buy it. His hands shook when he held it out. "I don't have a perfect family," he said, "but I want to build a good life with you." I said yes. Because I loved him. Because I believed the family he was talking about could become different from the one he'd grown up in. Our wedding was small. My brother Daniel couldn't attend because of work overseas. He had spent most of his adult life moving from one industrial project to another, fixing machines in places where people worked dangerous jobs. He had always been that way. When we were children, he was the person who stood between me and anything frightening. When our father disappeared, Daniel became the man who made sure there was food in the refrigerator. When our mother became sick years later, he drove through the night to sit beside her hospital bed. And when I got married, he sent me a video message from an airport lounge. "I couldn't be there," he said, smiling tiredly at the camera. "But I'm proud of you, kid. Take care of yourself. And make sure that husband of yours remembers that I know where he lives." I laughed so hard I cried. Nathan watched the video beside me. "He seems like a good guy." "He is." "You're lucky." I smiled. "I know." At our reception, Eleanor asked me whether Daniel was really my brother. I thought she was joking. "Of course." She nodded. Then she walked away. I didn't know why. I didn't know that she had already decided Daniel was a problem. Over the next few years, Nathan and I built our own home. Nothing luxurious. A 2-story brick house with a narrow porch, a maple tree in the front yard, and a kitchen with terrible cabinets we promised ourselves we would replace someday. It became our safe place. Or at least I thought it was. Eleanor came over often. At first, I tried hard to impress her. I learned which dishes she liked. I remembered birthdays. I brought flowers. I asked her advice. Eventually, I stopped. Not because I disliked her. Because I realized approval from Eleanor Whitmore came with a price. And I was tired of paying it. She began making small changes whenever she visited. She rearranged my kitchen. Moved photographs. Changed the blankets in the guest room. Once I returned from work and found the framed photograph of my mother removed from the hallway. I asked Nathan about it. He looked uncomfortable. Mom thought it was too personal for the entryway. I stared at him. "It is my mother." "I know." "So why is her picture in a drawer?" "I'll talk to her." That night, he kissed my forehead. The picture stayed in the drawer. That was how Eleanor operated. She rarely destroyed anything. She simply moved it. A photograph. A memory. A person. Until one day you looked around and realized your life had been rearranged without your permission. My brother noticed it too. During our weekly phone calls, Daniel would ask how things were. I never told him everything. He worried too much. Instead, I'd say, "Eleanor is being Eleanor." And he'd laugh. "That's not an answer. It is if you know her." Then he'd tell me about his latest project. We kept our relationship alive through phone calls, voice messages, and occasional visits. Nathan knew about him. He had met Daniel once. But Eleanor never had. That fact should have bothered me more than it did. Then I became pregnant. The news changed everything. Nathan cried when I showed him the test. He hugged me so tightly that I couldn't breathe. For a few days, we lived inside our own little world. Then we told his parents. Eleanor stared at my stomach. "You're finally giving Nathan a real family." The room went silent. Nathan looked at her. "Mom." She smiled. "You know what I mean." I pretended I didn't hear it. But I did. I heard everything. During my pregnancy, Eleanor began visiting more frequently. She brought food. She folded baby clothes. She offered opinions about doctors, hospitals, names, furniture, feeding schedules, and even the color of the nursery walls. Then one afternoon, she noticed a framed photograph of Daniel on my desk. She picked it up. "That's him?" "Yes." "He looks rough." I took the picture from her. "He works hard." She stared at me. "I suppose." I put the photograph back. That night, Nathan noticed I was upset. "What happened?" I told him. He sighed. "Don't let Mom get under your skin. I don't want her deciding who belongs in our son's life." "She won't." "Promise?" He looked at me. "I promise." I wanted to believe him. So I did. Near the end of my pregnancy, Nathan gave his mother a spare key to our house. "For emergencies," he explained. I looked at him. "What emergency?" He smiled awkwardly. "Anything. If you go into labor while I'm working. If something happens." Eleanor smiled. "See, my son still needs his mother." I didn't argue. I wish I had. Because a few days later, I came home from a doctor's appointment and found Eleanor inside the nursery. She had taken the quilt my mother had made and placed it inside a closet. "What are you doing?" She turned. "Oh, this old thing? It belongs on the crib. I put something cleaner there." I opened the closet and took the quilt out. It was handmade from pieces of my mother's old dresses. Gold. Gray. Soft blue. My mother had stitched every piece herself. She died 2 years before my pregnancy. The quilt was the last thing she had ever made for a child she would never meet. I placed it back over the crib. Eleanor watched me. Homemade things always look a little unfinished. I didn't answer. She smiled. "Don't be sensitive, Claire." Then she walked away. That night, Daniel called. "How's my nephew?" I smiled. Still refusing to come out. "Smart kid. He'll meet you soon. Already booked time off." I laughed. "You did?" 2 weeks. "Daniel, you didn't have to." "I know." His voice softened. "I missed too much when Mom was sick. I'm not missing this." I closed my eyes. For the first time in months, I felt completely safe. I didn't know that while I was talking to my brother, Eleanor was already beginning to tell the rest of the family a different story. It started with a message. A single photograph. and a lie carefully cropped to make the truth impossible to see. I discovered that months later. But at the time, I knew nothing. All I knew was that on a cold Sunday afternoon, Eleanor sat across from me in my own kitchen, smiling while her phone rested face down beside her coffee. She asked me casually, "Claire, who exactly is Daniel planning to visit when the baby arrives?" I looked up. "My family." She smiled. "Of course." There was something strange in her voice. I couldn't explain it. But I felt it. The same way you feel a storm before the first drop of rain. And for the first time, I wondered whether Eleanor wasn't simply trying to control my life. Maybe she was preparing to erase someone from it. I just didn't know who. Not yet. The night before my son was born, my brother drove through an ice storm because I had told him there was one person I needed beside me. That person was not my husband. Not because I didn't love my husband. Not because there was anything wrong with our marriage. But because my husband Nathan was working hundreds of miles away when my labor started, and the roads were becoming dangerous by the hour. My brother Daniel had promised me one thing. I'll get there. He kept that promise. What I didn't know was that someone else had been watching. Someone had seen Daniel arrive at the hospital. Someone had taken a photograph. And someone had decided that photograph was worth more than the truth. My labor began at 2:17 in the morning. I woke up with a sharp pain across my lower back and stared at the ceiling, trying to decide whether it was real. For weeks, I'd been waking up uncomfortable. Every ache felt important. Every cramp made me wonder. But this one was different. It didn't fade. It tightened, then released. I reached for Nathan. His side of the bed was cold. I remembered immediately. He was 2 states away, finishing an emergency electrical repair after a winter storm had damaged several substations. He had called before midnight. "I'll be home tomorrow," he'd promised. I had laughed. "You've said that 3 times. This time I mean it." "You always mean it." "I'll be there before the baby." I wanted to believe him. Then another contraction came. Stronger. I sat up. "All right," I whispered. The baby kicked. I put both hands over my stomach. "Looks like we're not waiting for Dad." I called Nathan. No answer. Again. Nothing. I wasn't angry. I knew the work he was doing mattered. Instead, I called Daniel. He answered before the second ring. "Claire?" I could hear an engine running behind him. "I'm in labor." There was a pause. Then his voice changed. "Where are you?" "Home." "I'll be there." "Daniel, the roads." I said I'll be there. "You're 4 hours away." "Then I'd better leave now." I smiled despite the pain. "You don't have to." "I know." That was Daniel. He never did things because he had to. He did them because someone he loved needed him. 40 minutes later, he called again. "I'm on the road." "Drive carefully." "I am." "You better be." "Claire?" "Yes?" "I'm not missing this one." My throat tightened. He didn't need to explain. We both knew what he meant. Our mother had died 3 years earlier. Daniel had been overseas when it happened. He made it home too late. He carried that guilt everywhere. So when he said he wasn't missing this one, he wasn't talking only about a baby. He was talking about another goodbye he refused to miss. By dawn, the contractions were 7 minutes apart. I called Nathan again. This time he answered. His voice was exhausted. Claire? I'm in labor. Silence. Then, what? I think we're having him today. I'll leave now. You can't drive that distance safely. I'll figure it out. Please don't. I should be there. You should, I said softly, but I don't want you becoming the emergency instead. He breathed heavily. Who's with you? Daniel is coming. Another pause. Then Nathan said, Your brother? Yes. Okay. There was something strange in the way he said it. Not anger. Not suspicion. Just hesitation. I didn't have time to think about it. The next contraction hit. I gasped. Nathan immediately said, I'll call you back. Okay. The call ended. Daniel arrived 45 minutes later. He came through the front door covered in melted snow, his jacket soaked at the shoulders, his boots leaving dark prints across the floor. He looked exhausted. I started crying the moment I saw him. He dropped his bag. Oh no. I know. Don't cry. I can't help it. He hugged me carefully. Then he stepped back. Where's the hospital bag? By the door. Where are your shoes? Daniel. What? I'm in labor. I know. That's why I'm asking. I laughed through my tears. For the next hour, he became a machine. He checked the bag, charged my phone, filled a water bottle, found my coat, called the hospital. And when another contraction came, he held my hand. You're doing great. I hate you. I know. I really hate you. That's fine. Another contraction. I squeezed his fingers. He winced. Still love you? No. Fair. At 8:06 we left for the hospital. The roads were terrible. Snow covered the shoulders. Cars crawled along. Daniel drove with both hands on the wheel, his eyes fixed ahead. Slow down, I whispered. I am. Slower. We're going 12 miles under the limit. Good. He glanced at me. You're bossy. I learned from Mom. He laughed. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then Daniel said quietly, She would have loved this. I looked out the window. Yes. She'd have been impossible. Absolutely. She would have bought 6 different blankets. 8. And argued with the nurses. Definitely 8. We laughed. Then I cried again. Daniel reached over and squeezed my hand. She'll be there in some way. I looked at him. What do you mean? He nodded toward the hospital bag. The quilt. I hadn't realized he'd brought it. Our mother's quilt. The one she'd made from scraps of clothing she'd kept for years. The one Eleanor had shoved into a closet. Daniel had taken it from the nursery before we left. He had wrapped it in plastic to protect it from the snow. I thought you might want it. I couldn't speak. I just nodded. At the hospital, Daniel checked me in as my brother. The nurse asked him to confirm his relationship. Brother, he said. Then he looked at me. Big brother. The nurse smiled. That's better. She gave him a visitor band. He put it on. Neither of us thought twice about it. It was simply a brother helping his sister. Nothing more. But several floors above us, a camera captured Daniel walking through the maternity ward. And 3 hours later, that photograph would become the center of a story Eleanor Whitmore had already started writing. My labor lasted nearly 14 hours. Nathan couldn't get through because the storm had closed part of the highway. He called whenever he could. Daniel stayed beside me. He never left. At one point, I woke from a short sleep and saw him sitting beside the window. He was holding the quilt. He looked at it for a long time. "Daniel?" He turned. "I'm here." "Were you asleep?" "No." "You look awful." "So do you." I smiled. He spread the quilt across the foot of the hospital bed. "She should be here." "I know." He swallowed. "I hate that she isn't." I reached for his hand. "She is." He shook his head. "No." "Yes." "Claire." "She is." He looked at me. I pointed toward the quilt. "You brought her." He looked down. His eyes filled. "Yeah." He nodded. "I did." At 6:42 the next morning, my son was born. His name was Oliver. He weighed 7 pounds, 6 ounces. He came into the world furious. His cry filled the room. I laughed. Then I sobbed. The nurse placed him against my chest. I stared at his face. Tiny nose. Closed fists. Dark lashes. And a small patch of reddish-brown hair. Daniel stood beside the bed. He didn't say anything. He simply touched one finger to Oliver's hand. Oliver grabbed it. Daniel broke. He turned away. I knew why. He had missed our mother's final breath. He had spent years believing he had failed the people he loved. Now a newborn had wrapped one tiny hand around his finger. And for the first time in years, my brother looked like he believed he had made it somewhere on time. "Hey, little man," he whispered. Oliver squeezed harder. Daniel laughed through tears. "Yeah." He leaned closer. "I'm your uncle." I watched him. Then I noticed the hospital door. A woman was standing in the hallway. Eleanor. My mother-in-law. She had arrived without telling us. Her eyes moved from me to Oliver. Then to Daniel. She froze. Daniel noticed her. He stood. "Hello." Eleanor didn't answer. She looked at me. Then at him. Then at the baby. Her face became unreadable. "Who is he?" I frowned. "My brother." She stared at Daniel. "You're Daniel?" "Yes." She gave a tiny smile. But there was no warmth in it. "I've heard about you." Daniel looked at me. I immediately knew something was wrong. Eleanor stepped closer. "So you came?" "Yes." "From where?" "Ohio." She nodded. "How convenient." I didn't understand. Daniel did. His expression hardened. "I came because my sister needed me." Eleanor looked at Oliver. Then back at Daniel. "I see." She left. I assumed that was the end of it. It wasn't. That evening, while I slept, Eleanor sat in the hospital cafeteria with 2 other relatives. Her phone was on the table. On the screen was a photograph. Daniel entering the hospital. Underneath it, someone had written, "Claire's brother finally showed up. Nathan wasn't there." Eleanor stared at the picture. Then she typed, "Has anyone confirmed how long he stayed?" A reply came. No. Another message appeared. Why? Eleanor waited before answering. Then she typed, "Because Claire said she wasn't alone." That sentence was all it took. By midnight, the family group chat had become a courtroom. Questions became assumptions. Assumptions became accusations. And accusations became certainty. Nobody asked Claire. Nobody asked Daniel. Nobody called Nathan. They simply decided what they wanted to believe. Eleanor sent the photograph again. This time she added, "Look at the timing." One person replied, "That doesn't prove anything." Eleanor answered, "It proves enough to ask questions." Another message appeared. "Does Nathan know?" Eleanor wrote, "Not yet." Then she put her phone away. 3 days later, I was discharged. Oliver had developed mild newborn jaundice, so we'd stayed one extra night. Nathan finally arrived. He was exhausted. He hadn't slept properly in nearly 2 days. But the moment he saw Oliver, everything else disappeared. He picked up his son. "Hey!" His voice cracked. "Dad finally made it." I smiled. "You missed the grand entrance." "I know." He kissed my forehead. "I'm sorry." "You got here." He held Oliver closer. Daniel stood near the window. Nathan looked at him. "You saved us." Daniel shrugged. "That's what brothers are for." Nathan smiled. "Thank you." Everything seemed normal. Except Nathan's phone kept vibrating. Again. And again. He looked at the screen but didn't answer. I noticed. "Everything okay?" "Yeah." "Who is it?" "My mom." I laughed weakly. "She's probably furious you didn't tell her the baby's middle name." He didn't smile. "What?" "Nothing." I didn't press him. I was 3 days postpartum. I was tired. My body hurt. My son needed me. I didn't know that while I was packing his things, Eleanor was packing something else. A story. And by the time we reached home, that story had already been accepted by half the family as truth. When Nathan turned into our driveway, I noticed several cars outside. Too many. I looked at him. "Did you invite people?" "No." He stared through the windshield. The porch light was on. In broad daylight. That was Eleanor's habit. She liked lights on when she wanted something to feel official. Nathan parked. I lifted Oliver carefully. My husband came around and opened my door. "Stay close to me." I looked at him. "Why?" He didn't answer. We walked toward the front door. I could already hear voices inside. Then Nathan stopped. His hand tightened around mine. "Claire." "What?" He swallowed. "I think we need to talk." Before I could ask what he meant, the door opened. Eleanor stood there. Behind her were Nathan's father, his sister, 2 cousins, and 3 suitcases. Not 1. 3. I stared at them. Then at the luggage. Then at Eleanor. "What is this?" She stepped aside. "Come in." I didn't move. "Why are there suitcases?" She looked at Oliver. Then at me. "We've made a decision." Nathan's face went pale. "Mom." She ignored him. Claire, you need to put the baby down. No. You need to hear us. I can hear you holding him. Eleanor's mouth tightened. Then this will be difficult. She looked at Nathan. Tell her. He didn't speak. Tell her what? I asked. Eleanor stepped forward. You've betrayed my son. The room went silent. I felt Oliver stir against my chest. My voice came out almost as a whisper. What are you talking about? Eleanor looked at the baby. Then at me. And finally she said the words that would change all of our lives. We know you weren't alone when Oliver was born. I looked at Nathan. He looked at me. And in that instant I understood something terrifying. My husband hadn't brought me home to rest. He had brought me home to face a family that had already decided I was guilty. I tightened my arms around my newborn son. And somewhere inside the diaper bag at my feet was a hospital document I had not yet realized would destroy every lie Eleanor had built. The truth was already in my hands. I just hadn't opened it yet. The room went completely silent. I could hear Oliver breathing against my chest. Small, warm breaths. Safe breaths. The only sound in the house that still felt honest. I looked at Nathan. Tell me what she means. Nathan opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Eleanor answered for him. We know Daniel was with you at the hospital. I stared at her. Yes. And Nathan wasn't. He couldn't get there because of the storm. We know. Then what exactly are you accusing me of? Nobody answered. I looked from face to face. Nathan's father stared at the floor. His sister Megan had folded her arms tightly across her chest. One of the cousins wouldn't even look at me. Eleanor remained perfectly calm. That frightened me more than shouting would have. She had rehearsed this. Every word. Every expression. Every person standing in that room had been given a role. Claire, Eleanor said softly, we aren't here to humiliate you. I almost laughed. You brought an audience. We brought family. You brought luggage. Her eyes flicked toward the suitcases. That isn't your concern. I looked at Nathan. It becomes my concern when it's inside my house. Nathan finally spoke. Mom, stop. She turned toward him. You deserve to know the truth. I do. Then ask her who was with her. He stared at me. I answered before he could. My brother. Eleanor shook her head. That isn't the whole truth. It is the only truth. Then why didn't you tell Nathan immediately? I frowned. I did. Nathan looked confused. She told me Daniel was coming. Eleanor turned toward him. Did she tell you he stayed? Nathan hesitated. I assumed he did. Assumed? She almost smiled. You assumed. I looked at Nathan. He looked exhausted. Confused. And hurt. Not angry. Not yet. That mattered. Because I knew my husband. He wasn't convinced. He was frightened. And Eleanor knew exactly how to use fear. She walked to the coffee table and picked up her phone. Someone saw Daniel at the hospital. She turned the screen toward Nathan. There was a photograph. My brother walking through the hospital entrance. Snow on his shoulders. His head lowered. The timestamp was visible. 11:04 p.m. Nathan stared at it. I remembered that moment. Daniel arriving. His boots wet. His jacket soaked. His hand on my shoulder. Nothing about it was secret. "That's my brother," I said. Eleanor nodded. "Yes." "So what?" "The photograph was taken the night before Oliver was born." "Yes." "And Nathan wasn't there." "He was driving back after the baby was already born." I felt my stomach tighten. "That's not true." Nathan looked at her. "What are you saying?" Eleanor turned to him. "I'm saying you should ask Claire why another man was with her all night." The room seemed to shrink. I stared at her. Then I looked at Nathan. He was pale. "Mom," he said slowly, "Daniel is her brother." Eleanor's voice remained calm. "That's what she says." I felt something cold move through me. Not fear. Recognition. This wasn't about Daniel. Not really. This was about the photograph. The timing. The story. Someone had deliberately removed every fact that made the truth obvious. I reached for my diaper bag. Nathan watched me. "What are you doing?" "Getting something." Eleanor stepped forward. "No." I stopped. "No?" "You're not changing the subject." "I am not changing anything." I opened the bag. "I'm showing you what actually happened." My fingers found the brown envelope. It was still there. I pulled it out. Eleanor's expression changed. Only slightly. But I saw it. Her eyes went straight to the envelope. That was the first crack. Nathan noticed it too. "What is that?" "Hospital records." Eleanor immediately said, "You don't need to make a scene." I looked at her. "You brought 8 people into my house to accuse me of cheating 3 days after I gave birth." I held up the envelope. "If anyone is making a scene, it isn't me." Megan stepped forward. "Claire, nobody wants this to get ugly." I looked at her. "Then stop helping her." She looked away. I opened the envelope. The first document was my discharge summary. The second was Oliver's birth record. The third was the visitor registration. I placed it on the table. Daniel arrived at 11:04 p.m. Nathan leaned forward. The paper clearly showed it. "Relationship, brother." His father looked up. Eleanor said nothing. I placed another document beside it. Hospital support person registration. Nathan picked it up. His eyes moved across the page. Then stopped. "Daniel Bennett." "That's right." His fingers tightened around the paper. "He was registered as your support person." "Yes." "Why didn't you tell me?" "I did." "When?" "At the hospital." He looked at me. "I told you he drove through the storm." Nathan closed his eyes. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Eleanor said, "Paperwork doesn't prove what happened behind closed doors." I turned toward her. "No." I reached into the envelope again. "But witnesses do." She frowned. I removed a second page. The nurse's delivery room log. Nathan took it. He read it. His expression changed. "What does it say?" Eleanor asked. Nathan didn't answer. I did. Daniel was in the room when Oliver was born. Eleanor's face hardened. "That proves nothing." "It proves exactly what you claimed was impossible." She looked at Nathan. "Your wife is manipulating paperwork." I stared at her. "Why are you so desperate to make this true?" She didn't answer. That was when Daniel stepped forward. He had been standing silently near the doorway. I can answer that. Everyone turned. Daniel looked at Eleanor. You've hated me since the first time you heard my name. Her expression tightened. I have no idea what you're talking about. Yes, you do. Nathan looked between them. What is he talking about? Daniel glanced at me, then back at Nathan. I didn't want to tell you this. Tell me what? Why your mother never wanted to meet me. Eleanor stepped forward. Daniel, don't. He smiled sadly. Now you don't want me to talk? Nathan's face changed. Mom? She ignored him. Daniel continued. 7 years ago, when Claire introduced me to the family, your mother asked what happened to our father. Nathan looked confused. What does that have to do with anything? Everything. I remembered that night. The question Eleanor had asked. The way her face had changed when I mentioned my father. Daniel looked at Nathan. Claire's father wasn't the only man who disappeared from our family. Eleanor's voice became sharp. Enough. Daniel didn't stop. Your father knew my father. Nathan stared at him. What? Daniel reached into his jacket. He pulled out a folded photograph. It was old. Faded. The edges were worn. He handed it to Nathan. Nathan looked at it. His eyebrows drew together. Then his face went completely still. Where did you get this? My mother kept it. Nathan stared at the photograph. There were 4 people standing outside an old manufacturing plant. One of them was my mother. Another was my father. And beside them stood a younger version of Nathan's father. Eleanor moved quickly. She snatched the photograph. That doesn't mean anything. Nathan looked at her. Mom. She didn't answer. Why is Dad in this picture? He worked there. So did Claire's father. Thousands of people worked there. Daniel nodded. True. He looked at Eleanor. But not everyone left the same week. The room fell silent again. I looked at Daniel. What are you saying? He shook his head. Not yet. Nathan stared at him. Then why bring it up? Because your mother already knows. Eleanor's voice became cold. You're trying to destroy this family. Daniel laughed once. No. He looked at Oliver. I'm trying to stop you from destroying my sisters. Eleanor stepped closer. You've always been trouble. Daniel's jaw tightened. And you've always been afraid of questions. Nathan stood. That's enough. His voice was different now. Stronger. He looked at his mother. I want everyone to leave. Eleanor stared at him. You're choosing her? No. He looked at me. I'm choosing the truth. Eleanor's face hardened. You don't know what you're choosing. Nathan pointed toward the door. Go home, Mom. His father stood slowly. Eleanor. She didn't move. Nathan's father finally touched her arm. Let's go. She pulled away. Then she looked at me. You think you've won. I didn't answer. She pointed at Oliver. You have no idea what you've brought into this family. My heart stopped. What does that mean? She smiled. Ask your brother. Then she walked out. The door closed behind her. Nobody moved. Nathan stared at the photograph Daniel had given him. Then he turned toward me. Claire. I shook my head. I don't know. Daniel picked up his coat. I should go. Nathan looked at him. No. Daniel stopped. I want answers. You're not ready. I am. Daniel studied him. Then he nodded. Your mother didn't start this because of the baby. Nathan frowned. She started it years ago. How many? Daniel looked at me. 7. My chest tightened. 7 years. The exact amount of time I'd been married to Nathan. The exact amount of time Eleanor had been quietly pushing Daniel out of our lives. What happened 7 years ago? I asked. Daniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked toward the old photograph. Your mother found out that Claire's family knew something about hers. Nathan stared at him. What? Daniel lowered his voice. She thought if she kept Claire away from me, she'd keep the past buried. I felt a chill. What past? Daniel looked at me. The kind that can ruin a family. That night, after everyone left, Nathan and I sat in the nursery. Oliver slept in his crib. The room was dim. The quilt lay over the rocking chair. Nathan held the old photograph. Why didn't you tell me about any of this? I didn't know. He looked at me. I believe you. I closed my eyes. Your mother wanted me to look guilty. She wanted me to think you were guilty. Yes. And Daniel? He was the easiest person to turn into a villain. Nathan looked down. Why? Because he wasn't here. He understood. He nodded slowly. My mother knew you would trust the photograph. She knew you were exhausted. She knew I wouldn't think clearly. And she knew everyone else would believe her. Nathan stared at the floor. I almost did. I reached for his hand. But you didn't. He squeezed my fingers. No. He looked toward Oliver. I'm sorry. I swallowed. Don't apologize for what someone else did. He shook his head. I should have protected you. You're here now. He looked at me. I need to tell you something. My heart tightened. What? He hesitated. The group chat. What group chat? He looked away. My family has one. I waited. What about it? My mother added me to it years ago. And? I stopped reading it. Why? Because they use it for family arguments. I stared at him. Did they talk about me? He didn't answer. That was answer enough. I felt my throat close. How long? I don't know. Find out. Nathan pulled out his phone. He opened the chat. Hundreds of messages appeared. He scrolled. His face slowly changed. I watched him read. Then he stopped. What? He didn't respond. Nathan. He turned the screen toward me. There was a message from Eleanor. Sent 3 weeks earlier. It said, once the baby comes, we need to make sure Claire understands that family reputation matters. Another message followed. Keep Daniel away. Then, I don't trust him. I looked at Nathan. Why? He kept scrolling. Then he found another message. This one was from the night I went into labor. Eleanor had written, Daniel is at the hospital. A cousin replied. How do you know? Eleanor answered. I have eyes everywhere. My stomach dropped. Nathan kept scrolling. Then he found the message that made him stop breathing. It had been sent while I was still in labor. Eleanor had written, By tomorrow Nathan will believe the baby isn't his. I stared at the screen. Neither of us moved. Then Nathan whispered, She planned this before Oliver was born. I nodded. But there was something worse. Something I hadn't seen yet. At the bottom of the conversation was a message from an unknown number. It had been sent 6 years earlier. One sentence. Eleanor, if you ever tell Nathan what happened to Daniel's father, you will lose your son. Nathan read it. His face went white. He looked at me. Who is this? I didn't know. Daniel did. He had returned to the doorway. His voice was barely audible. That number belongs to my mother. I turned. Daniel's eyes were fixed on the screen. She sent that message 6 years ago. Nathan stood. Why would your mother threaten Eleanor? Daniel looked at him. She didn't. He took the phone from Nathan. He read the message again. Then he whispered, That isn't my mother's number. The room went silent. Whose is it? I asked. Daniel looked at me. My father's. I felt the blood drain from my face. But your father is dead. Daniel nodded. He has been for 9 years. Nathan stared at him. Then how could he have sent a message 6 years ago? Daniel looked toward the sleeping baby. I don't know. He turned the phone over in his hand. But now we have a bigger problem. What? He looked directly at Nathan. Someone has been using my dead father's phone number. And for the first time that night, I understood that the accusation against me had never been the real mystery. It was only the door. And someone had just opened it. The number belonged to my father. For several seconds, nobody spoke. I looked at Daniel. Then at Nathan. Then at the phone in Nathan's hand. My father's name had been missing from our lives for so long that hearing it suddenly felt like someone had opened a locked room inside my chest. Daniel, I whispered, are you sure? He nodded. I memorized that number when I was a kid. Nathan stared at the screen. Your father died 9 years ago? Yes. Then someone had access to his number. Daniel shook his head. No, that's not the strangest part. What is? He looked at the message again. That number wasn't active after his death. A cold silence settled over the nursery. Nathan lowered the phone. Then how did someone send a message from it? Daniel looked toward the hallway. I don't know. I pulled Oliver closer. For the first time since giving birth, I felt afraid of the house itself. Not because someone was inside. Because someone had been inside our lives for years. Watching. Waiting. And perhaps planning. Nathan stood up. We need to find out who did this. Daniel shook his head. Not tonight. Why? Because whoever sent that message wanted us to find it. Nathan frowned. Daniel continued. They knew the number was connected to my father. They knew it would eventually lead us here. I looked at him. You think this is a trap? I think we've been walking through one for 7 years. Nathan's phone vibrated. All 3 of us froze. A new message had appeared. Unknown number. Nathan opened it. There were only 6 words. Stop looking before you lose more. My skin went cold. Nathan looked at Daniel. Who knows we're looking? Daniel shook his head. No one. The phone vibrated again. Another message. This time, it contained a photograph. An old photograph. A photograph of my mother, standing beside a young Eleanor. I stared at it. I've never seen that. Daniel took the phone. His face changed. Neither have I. Nathan leaned closer. When was this taken? Daniel zoomed in. Behind them was a building. A factory. The same factory from the photograph he had shown Nathan earlier. The one where our fathers had worked. I looked at Daniel. What was that place? He swallowed. Whitmore Industrial. Nathan's face went pale. My father's company. Daniel nodded. And my father's workplace. I stared at the image. Why would Mom and Eleanor be there together? Daniel didn't answer. Nathan did. Because they knew each other. We all looked at him. He sounded almost sick. My mother always said she met Claire's mother only once. Daniel looked at him. When? Before I was born. Daniel shook his head. That picture was taken after you were born. Nathan stared at the photograph. How do you know? Look at the date stamp. There was a tiny handwritten date on the back. August 1991. Nathan's expression changed. I was 3. Daniel nodded. Exactly. I felt my stomach tighten. What happened in 1991? Daniel looked at me. That is what we're going to find out. The next morning, Nathan called his father. He didn't tell him everything. He simply asked one question. Dad, did you know Claire's father? There was a long silence on the other end. Then his father's voice came quietly through the speaker. Yes. Nathan looked at me. How well? Another pause. Better than I should have. Nathan's jaw tightened. What does that mean? I don't want to discuss this over the phone. Then come here. Silence. Dad? I said I don't want to discuss it. Nathan's voice hardened. You accused my wife of betraying me. I didn't. Mom did. His father sighed. Then ask your mother why. Nathan ended the call. We sat there. Daniel looked at him. He knows. Nathan nodded. He knows something. I looked at the clock. What do we do now? Daniel stood. We find your mother's old records. My mother kept everything. I know. I stared at him. How? She told me. When? Before she died. He paused. She gave me a box. What box? Letters. My heart stopped. Letters from who? Daniel looked at me. Your father. I had never seen those letters. Not once. I didn't even know they existed. Daniel had kept them hidden. Not from me. From everyone. Why didn't you tell me? Because Mom told me not to. What did she say? He looked away. She said if Eleanor ever came looking for them, I should destroy them. Nathan stared at him. And you didn't? No. Why? Daniel reached into his coat. Because I couldn't destroy the only proof that Dad wasn't the man everyone believed he was. He handed me a small brass key. My hands shook. What's this? The box. Where is it? Safe. Where? My house. Nathan stood. We're going. Daniel nodded. But before we could leave, someone knocked on the front door. 3 slow knocks. Nobody moved. Another knock. Nathan looked through the window. A man stood outside. Older. Gray-haired. Wearing a dark coat. Daniel went completely still. I whispered, "Who is that?" He didn't answer. The man looked directly toward the window. Then he raised one hand. In it was an envelope. Daniel whispered one name. Gerald. Nathan looked at him. My father? Daniel nodded. That's your father. Nathan opened the door. Gerald stepped inside. He looked older than I remembered. His face was tired. Not angry. Afraid. He looked at Oliver first. Then at me. Then at Daniel. I should have come years ago. Nathan closed the door. You should have. Gerald nodded. I know. He removed his coat. His hands were shaking. I don't know how much your mother has told you. Nothing. Good. Nathan stared at him. Why is that good? Because now you can hear it without believing her version first. He placed an old envelope on the table. Your mother didn't create this story because she hated Claire. I looked at him. Then why? Gerald looked at Daniel. Because she was terrified of your father. Daniel's expression hardened. My father is dead. I know. What was she afraid of? Gerald took a breath. Your father discovered that Whitmore Industrial had been hiding safety reports. Daniel frowned. What kind? Reports about equipment failures. I felt a chill. People could have died. Gerald nodded. They almost did. Nathan stared at him. And my father knew? I knew. Did you hide them? Gerald looked down. Yes. The word hung in the room. Nathan took a step backward. Why? Because I was 29. I had a wife, a child, a mortgage. Your grandfather controlled the company. Daniel's voice was bitter. So you sacrificed my father. Gerald didn't defend himself. Yes. Daniel's eyes filled. What happened? Your father threatened to go to the authorities. And? Your mother found out. Daniel looked confused. What did she have to do with it? Gerald looked at me. Because your mother was the only person who had copies of the reports. I couldn't breathe. My mother? Yes. Why? Because she worked in the accounting office. I stared at him. I had always believed my mother had worked there only briefly. Gerald continued. She copied everything. Daniel's voice cracked. Why didn't she tell us? She was afraid. Of Eleanor? No. Gerald looked toward the hallway. Of what Eleanor was willing to do. Nathan stepped forward. What did my mother do? Gerald didn't answer immediately. Then he said, She threatened Claire's father. Daniel's fists tightened. With what? His children. The room went silent. I felt tears gathering. She threatened us? Gerald nodded. She told him that if he went public, She would make sure your family lost everything. Daniel whispered. She destroyed his reputation. Yes. She told people he stole. Yes. She made everyone believe he abandoned us. Gerald looked down. Yes. Daniel turned away. For years, he had believed our father simply chose to leave. Now he was learning that the story had been manufactured. But there was one question left. Why did Dad disappear? Gerald looked at him. He didn't. Daniel turned. What? He never abandoned you. My knees weakened. I grabbed the edge of the table. Then where did he go? Gerald's eyes filled with tears. He went into hiding. Why? Because someone tried to kill him. Silence. Nobody moved. Gerald continued. Your father had copies of everything. He knew someone would come after him. Daniel whispered. Who? Gerald looked at me. Then at Nathan. I don't know. You don't know? I knew who ordered it. My heart stopped. Who? Gerald's voice dropped. Your grandfather. Nathan looked horrified. My grandfather? Yes. Why? Because the reports could have destroyed the company. Daniel stared at Gerald. And Eleanor? She helped. The room seemed to tilt. I remembered every time Eleanor had looked at me. Every time she'd questioned my family. Every time she'd tried to make Daniel disappear. She wasn't simply cruel. She had a reason. And that reason had survived for decades. Nathan sat down. My mother has been afraid of Daniel because he looks like his father. Gerald nodded. Not only that. What else? Because Daniel has something she believed was destroyed. Daniel looked at him. The letters. Gerald nodded. Those letters. I looked at Daniel. What is in them? He didn't answer. Gerald did. Your father wrote down everything. Nathan stood. Then we need to see them. Gerald shook his head. Not yet. Why? Because there is something else you need to know. He looked directly at me. Your son isn't the reason Eleanor came after you. I frowned. Then what is? Gerald pointed toward the brown envelope. The hospital records. I stared at him. What do they have to do with this? Your brother's name is on them. Daniel looked confused. So? Gerald's voice became almost a whisper. Your mother gave birth to Daniel at that hospital. I froze. What? Daniel stared at him. I was born at St. Mary's. Yes. Why does that matter? Gerald looked at me. Because that was the same hospital where Eleanor's first child was born. Nathan went pale. Mom's first child? Gerald nodded. Before you. Nathan stared at him. I never had a sibling. Gerald looked at him sadly. You did. Nobody spoke. Then Gerald said the words that shattered everything we thought we knew. Your mother had a daughter. Nathan's mouth fell open. She told everyone the baby died. Daniel looked at Gerald. And? Gerald reached into his coat. He removed a small, faded hospital photograph. He placed it on the table. A newborn baby. A hospital bracelet. A handwritten name. I leaned closer. My heart stopped. The name on the bracelet was not Eleanor's surname. It was mine. Daniel stared at the photograph. Nathan couldn't breathe. And then I noticed the date. The baby had been born 37 years earlier. The same year my father disappeared. The same year Eleanor's secret began. Daniel whispered, "Claire." I looked at him. He pointed to the photograph. "That baby has Mom's necklace." My hands began to shake, because I recognized it. A small silver pendant. My mother had worn it every day of her life. And suddenly, the photograph raised a question none of us had been prepared to ask. What if the secret Eleanor had spent 37 years protecting wasn't about my father at all? What if it was about who that baby really belonged to? Nathan looked at his father. "Dad." Gerald closed his eyes. "I am sorry." Nathan's voice broke. "Who was that child?" Gerald opened his eyes. He looked at me, then at Daniel, then at Nathan, and said, "Your mother never lost her daughter. She gave her away." My blood ran cold. "Who did she give her to?" Gerald looked toward the photograph. "To the one family she trusted to keep the truth buried." Daniel stared at me. Nathan stared at Daniel. And I realized that the three of us were standing on the edge of a secret that had been waiting longer than any of us had been alive. Then Gerald whispered the name. Bennett. The word Bennett hung in the room like a sentence nobody wanted to finish. My name. My family. My blood. Nathan stared at Gerald. "Explain." Gerald looked at me first. "I don't know how much your mother told you about your birth." I felt my heart pounding. "My mother died without telling me anything." He nodded. "That was deliberate." Daniel stepped closer. "What are you saying?" Gerald took a slow breath. 37 years ago, Eleanor gave birth to a baby girl. Nathan shook his head. "She told me she had a miscarriage before I was born." She lied. His face drained of color. "Why?" "Because the baby was born healthy." Daniel looked at the photograph. "And the child?" Gerald's eyes moved toward me. "The child was adopted." My knees weakened. I sat down. "No." Daniel stared at me. "Claire." I shook my head. "No, my mother gave birth to me." Gerald nodded. "Yes." Nathan looked at him. "Then why are you saying Eleanor's baby was Claire?" Gerald's silence answered before his words did. "Because Eleanor's baby was not Claire." I looked up. "What?" Gerald pointed toward the photograph. "The baby in that picture was Eleanor's daughter." "Then who was she?" "Someone Eleanor believed would eventually expose her." Daniel frowned. "I don't understand." Gerald looked at Nathan. "Your mother had a daughter with someone else." Nathan froze. "No. She was married to your father, but the child wasn't his." The room went completely silent. Gerald continued. "Your mother knew that child could destroy her marriage, her reputation, and eventually the company." Nathan looked sick. "Who was the father?" Gerald's voice dropped. "Claire's father." I couldn't breathe. Daniel stepped backward. "No." Gerald nodded. "Your father and Eleanor had a relationship before either family knew the truth." Nathan stared at him. "You're saying my mother had a child with Claire's father?" "Yes." "And Claire?" "Claire was born later." I closed my eyes. Everything felt impossible. My mother. My father. Eleanor. Nathan. The photograph. The hospital. None of it made sense. Then Daniel said quietly, "So the baby wasn't Claire?" Gerald shook his head. "No." "Then why did you say Bennett?" "Because the baby was eventually raised by the Bennett family." I looked at him. "My family?" He nodded. "But not your parents." I stared at him. "Who?" Gerald reached into his coat again. This time he pulled out a yellow document. An adoption record. I took it. The page was old, but the names were clear. The child's birth mother, Eleanor Whitmore. The biological father, Thomas Bennett. I stopped breathing. Thomas Bennett. My father's name. Then I saw the adoptive parents. My aunt and uncle. People I had always known as relatives. People who had raised another child in secret. I looked at Daniel. He looked just as stunned. She was adopted into the family. Gerald nodded. Your mother knew where the child went. Who was she? Gerald looked at Nathan. Her name was Rebecca. Nathan whispered. Rebecca? He looked as though the name itself hurt. My mother had a daughter named Rebecca? Yes. Where is she? Gerald hesitated. I don't know. Daniel looked at him. You don't know? She disappeared. When? 20 years ago. I stared at the document. Why? Because Eleanor found out she was asking questions. Nathan stood. My mother destroyed her own daughter? Gerald didn't answer. He didn't have to. The truth was written all over his face. I looked at the old photograph again. The baby wore the silver necklace my mother had owned. Not because my mother was the baby's mother. Because she had been part of the secret. My mother had helped protect Rebecca. And perhaps she had spent her entire life carrying the guilt. Daniel sat beside me. Claire. I looked at him. You okay? I laughed bitterly. No. He squeezed my shoulder. I know. Nathan paced across the nursery. So why did Eleanor accuse Claire? Gerald answered immediately. Because she recognized Daniel. Daniel frowned. She recognized me? Your face. He stared at Gerald. You look like your father. Daniel's expression hardened. And that scared her. Yes. Because she thought I knew? Gerald nodded. She believed your father left evidence behind. Daniel looked at the brown envelope. The letters. Yes. And Claire had them? No. Daniel looked confused. Then why attack her? Gerald looked at me. Because Eleanor believed your mother had told you. My heart tightened. She thought my mother gave me the evidence. Yes. She thought Daniel and I were looking for it. Yes. Nathan finally understood. So the baby accusation was a distraction. Gerald nodded. Exactly. The entire attack against me had been designed to make Nathan question me. To separate me from Daniel. To make us look guilty. To make us defensive. And while everyone argued about whether Oliver was Nathan's son, nobody would ask why Eleanor was terrified of an old photograph. I looked at Nathan. Your mother didn't want me to find the truth. No. She wanted you to abandon me. Yes. Because if I lost you, I'd lose the reason to keep digging. Nathan came closer. I am not leaving you. I looked at him. Even after everything? He took my hand. Especially after everything. For the first time in days, I believed him completely. Then Daniel opened the old box. Inside were dozens of letters. Some were written by my father. Some by my mother. And several had Eleanor's name on them. We spent hours reading. The first letter was dated 1989. My father's handwriting was unmistakable. He wrote that Eleanor had threatened him. He wrote about the company. He wrote about the safety reports. And then he wrote something that made Daniel stop reading. She knows about the child. I looked at him. What child? He kept reading. She believes the baby can be used against me. My mother had responded 2 days later. I will protect the baby, but you must leave. Another letter. If they find out, they'll destroy all of us. Another. I will tell Claire when she is old enough. I stared at the page. She was going to tell me. Daniel nodded. But she never did. Because she died. No. He turned another page. There was a final letter. Dated 6 months before our mother died. It contained only a few lines. If Eleanor ever comes after Claire, show her the blue ledger. Daniel looked at me. What blue ledger? I don't know. Nathan looked through the box. There isn't one. Daniel searched again. Nothing. Then he found a photograph tucked beneath the letters. It showed our mother standing outside a storage facility. On the back was an address. Daniel recognized it. That place still exists. Nathan stood. Then we're going. I looked at Oliver. You stay with us. Of course. We left before sunrise. The storage facility was nearly empty. The manager was an elderly man who remembered my mother. When Daniel showed him the photograph, his expression changed. She came here many times. How long ago? About 3 years before she died. Did she leave anything? He hesitated. Yes. My heart raced. What? A blue ledger. Daniel looked at me. The manager led us to a small storage unit. Inside was one metal box. Blue. Exactly as the letter had described. Daniel opened it. Inside were financial records, safety reports, photographs, and one cassette tape. Nathan stared at it. What is that? Daniel picked it up. A recording. We found an old player at the manager's office. The tape crackled. Then my mother's voice filled the room. If you're hearing this, then I didn't get the chance to tell Claire myself. I covered my mouth. Daniel closed his eyes. My mother's voice continued. Claire, if this reaches you, understand one thing. Your father never abandoned us. I began crying. He was trying to protect you. The recording continued. Eleanor Whitmore believes the past belongs to her. It doesn't. There was a long pause. Then my mother said something that made every person in the room freeze. Rebecca is alive. Nathan stared at me. Daniel stopped breathing. The recording continued. She changed her name. She has been living under another identity for years. My mother gave the new name. Rachel Bennett. I whispered. Bennett. Daniel looked at me. The child. My mother continued. Rachel knows the truth. The tape crackled. She knows who her biological parents were. Then came the sentence that changed everything. She is Nathan's sister. Nathan sat down. His face was covered with tears. For years he had believed he was an only child. Now he knew he had a sister. A woman who had been erased from his life before he was old enough to remember her. The recording ended. Nobody spoke. Then Nathan asked, "Where is she?" Daniel looked at the ledger. There was one final page. A current address. Rachel Bennett. The address was only an hour away. We drove there that afternoon. The house was small. White siding. Blue door. A wind chime hanging beside the porch. Daniel knocked. No answer. He knocked again. A woman opened the door. She was around 40. Dark hair. Green eyes. A silver pendant around her neck. The same pendant from the hospital photograph. She looked at Daniel. Then at me. Then at Nathan. Her face went completely pale. Nathan whispered, "Rebecca?" The woman stepped backward. No. Daniel said her name. Rachel. She stared at him. How do you know that name? He held up the photograph. She covered her mouth. Tears filled her eyes. Then she looked at Nathan. And something in her expression broke. You're him. Nathan couldn't speak. My brother. She nodded. Yes. Then she looked at me. And you're Claire. I nodded. How do you know me? She smiled sadly. Because your mother was the only person who ever told me the truth. I felt tears running down my face. What happened to you? Rachel looked toward the street. Eleanor happened. She invited us inside. For the next 2 hours, she told us everything. Eleanor had given her away to protect the family's reputation. My aunt and uncle raised her. They were instructed never to tell her where she came from. When Rachel discovered the truth as a teenager, she began searching. Eleanor threatened her. Then someone broke into her apartment. Her files disappeared. She changed her name and went into hiding. But my mother kept contact with her. Quietly. Secretly. Until her death. Rachel looked at Nathan. She told me you were kind. Nathan cried. I don't remember you. I know. She smiled. You were 3. I should have known. You couldn't. He looked down. I wish I had. Rachel touched his hand. It's not your fault. Then she turned toward Daniel. And Eleanor was terrified of you because your father left one final piece of evidence. What? Rachel pointed toward the blue ledger. The original safety report. Daniel opened the ledger. A folded document was hidden inside the back cover. He unfolded it. There were signatures. Dates. Names. And one signature belonged to Eleanor. Nathan stared at it. She signed this? Rachel nodded. She knew people were going to die. Daniel's eyes filled with anger. And my father tried to stop it. Yes. That's why she destroyed him. Yes. And that's why she tried to destroy Claire. Rachel looked at me. She thought your mother had given you the report. She hadn't. No. Rachel smiled sadly. She gave it to me. Everyone went silent. I looked at her. You have it? Rachel nodded. She walked into another room. When she returned, she carried a small wooden box. Inside was the original report, along with a letter from my father. And a second document. A confession. Signed by Eleanor. Nathan stared at it. She wrote this? Rachel nodded. She thought she was signing something else. What? A settlement agreement. Rachel looked at me. My mother tricked her. I almost smiled. For the first time, Eleanor's own manipulation had turned against her. We returned home that evening. Eleanor was waiting on the porch. She saw Rachel step out of the car. Her face collapsed. No. Rachel walked toward her. Hello, Mother. Eleanor stepped backward. You're dead. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. No. She looked at Nathan. You just wished I was. Nathan stood beside her. No one is disappearing again. Eleanor looked at Daniel. Then me. Then the baby. She finally understood. The family she had spent decades controlling was standing together. The lie was finished. She began to cry. Not because she regretted what she'd done. Because she had lost control. I was protecting you, she told Nathan. No, he said. You don't understand. I understand everything now. She shook her head. I did what I had to do. Nathan's voice remained calm. You accused my wife of cheating. I was afraid. You tried to separate her from her brother. I was protecting this family. You destroyed your own daughter. Eleanor looked at Rachel. I didn't know what else to do. Rachel answered quietly. You could have loved me. Eleanor had no response. Nathan stepped closer. You had 37 years. She cried harder. But Nathan didn't comfort her. He simply turned away. The police and attorneys handled the rest. The old company records were eventually released. The safety violations were investigated. Eleanor faced legal consequences for what she had done. But the greatest punishment wasn't prison. It was losing the control she had spent her life protecting. Rachel became part of our family. Not overnight. Not perfectly. There were awkward dinners. Unanswered questions. Old wounds. But there was something none of us had ever had before. Truth. Oliver grew up knowing his Uncle Daniel. Knowing his Aunt Rachel. Knowing his grandmother had made terrible choices, but that those choices did not define the people she had hurt. Years later, when Oliver asked why we kept the old blue ledger in a locked cabinet, I told him the truth. Because secrets grow in darkness. He looked at me. And truth? I smiled. Truth survives the light. Daniel laughed from the kitchen. Rachel shook her head. Nathan came over and kissed my forehead. And I looked at my son, the child who had nearly become the weapon in someone else's war. He had never been the problem. He had been the reason we finally stopped running from the past. I learned something through all of it. People can accuse you. They can twist photographs. They can repeat lies until everyone around you starts believing them. They can even use your silence against you. But truth does not become false because someone refuses to hear it. And family is not defined by the people who share your blood or the people who demand your loyalty. Family is defined by the people who stand beside you when the truth becomes expensive. The people who stay when leaving would be easier, The people who hold your hand when the entire room is pointing fingers. Daniel missed our mother's goodbye, but he never missed another hello. Rachel lost 37 years to a secret she never created. But she didn't lose the rest of her life. And I learned that sometimes the greatest revenge is not destroying the people who hurt you. It is building a life so honest, so peaceful, and so full of love that their lies no longer have anywhere to live. My mother once wrote that truth survives the light. She was right. Because in the end, Eleanor didn't lose us because we hated her. She lost us because we finally stopped being afraid of her. And that was the moment her power ended.